I want to cooperate, but at the same time, cause the death of somebody by me not paying attention. I'm already gonna get a lot of heat, a lot of other stuff from that. So, well, I guess I'll shoot it over. Yep, I'll just shoot it up. I got you.
Let me tell you what he did that day. He got in a 2-ton pickup truck with a 24-ounce Dos Equis beer, and he had his beer salts. Got on his phone, and in less than a mile, went down a curved road. He gets on that one-lane gravel road at 46 miles an hour, drives right by a 30-mile-an-hour posted speed sign, and when he got to that intersection, instead of stopping, he hit the gas. He had a stop sign on both sides of his truck. He plowed into us with that 2-ton pickup truck and full replacement cattle guard. Did Jen die right away? I found out from the evidence packet, no, she didn't. She agonized for 40 minutes, stuck in that vehicle. The airlifted me. He's sitting on the curb wondering how this is going to come down on him. Jennifer is dying in my vehicle, and he's on the curb worried about what's going to happen to him. Not a darn thing has happened to him. He got a ticket for running a stop sign.
Hello, and welcome back to Legal Dissent, where we evaluate your constitutional rights before they're taken away. Thank you all for joining us, and as always, if you enjoy our content, please do consider subscribing to our channel, liking this video, and interacting with us in the comments below. It really does help us out a lot in the YouTube algorithm. All of the videos, sources, news articles, and the contact information of the departments involved are located in the description, along with our contact information as well if you have a video that you would like us to evaluate. Today, we take a look at the heartbreaking story out of Lockhart, Texas. On June 10th, 2020, Santa Marcos Police Department Sergeant Ryan Hartman was off-duty operating his 2-ton F-250 and rammed into the Honda Accord that Pamela Watts and Jennifer Miller were driving. Pamela Watts was airlifted in critical condition to a nearby hospital, while Jennifer Miller tragically died on the scene. Sergeant Ryan Hartman walked away from the crash with no notable injuries. Here was the body cam footage of the officers who were first on the scene to talk to Hartman.
I want to cooperate, but at the same time, cause the death of somebody by me not paying attention. So I'm already gonna get a lot of heat, a lot of other stuff from that. So.
Well, you got to put yourself in my shoes. If I was in the same boat, you'd be asking me the same question. So
Then no.
okay. So you're going to be detained while I apply for a search warrant for your blood, okay?
And then I'll go ahead and I guess I'll shoot it over.
So,
Yep, I'll just shoot it up.
You get your hand back, okay?
I got you.
All right. I'm going to just detain you.
Okay.
Because, like I said, I got to apply for a search warrant.
At this point, officers have the following evidence. The crash, which clearly was caused by Hartman running through a stop sign. They have an opened alcoholic beverage in the car. They have him admitting that he caused the death of Jennifer Miller because he was not paying attention. They have enough probable cause to arrest him for multiple crimes, including driving while intoxicated. They did end up getting a warrant and drew his blood to test for alcohol almost 3 hours later. The test showed that there was 0 alcohol in his blood at the time of the test. According to AmericanAddictionCenters.org, the liver can metabolize about 12 ounces of beer per hour for the average man. Factors that influence this are age, weight, etc. Blood tests can typically detect alcohol up to 6 hours after the last drink. Does the test prove or disprove that alcohol played a part in this crash? No, absolutely not. It is completely possible that due to the delay in the test, his body metabolized the entire amount of alcohol that he consumed. It's also possible that he told the truth when he stated that he had been working at a friend's ranch a day or two earlier and he would have water and sodas and a beer every now and then. He goes on to say that he doesn't have a good answer, that it raises suspicion, and that it is illegal, but continues to insist that he had not consumed drugs or alcohol on the day of the crash, but having the open beer can does look bad. All of this to say, with the information that we currently have, we cannot prove if alcohol was a contributing factor to the crash or not. What we can say is that it is highly unusual and suspect that the officers on the scene did not subject Hartman to the field sobriety tests and did not ask him to cooperate in less intrusive methods that they commonly use on regular people to gain probable cause for an arrest for intoxication. Further, Hartman knows exactly what the protocol is if you refuse to submit to a blood draw on the scene. He knows he bought himself some time to metabolize the alcohol, and he knew exactly what he was doing. The Lockhart Police Department's investigation led them to recommend that Hartman be charged with criminal negligent homicide. The elements for this offense are defined in Texas Penal Code Section 19.01, subsection A. It states that a person commits this offense if he intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or with criminal negligence causes the death of an individual. I have no reason to believe that Hartman intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Jennifer Miller, which leaves the last two elements, recklessly or with criminal negligence. Both of these elements consider the defendant's mental state when the action occurred. When charging crimes, the government looks at the mental state of the actor involved when deciding what is the appropriate charge for them to file. Requiring mens rea, the Latin term for intention or knowledge of wrongdoing, constitutes a necessary factor in being charged with a crime for almost all criminal acts except a few strict liability crimes. The Texas Court of Appeals evaluated the distinction between the two mental states of criminally reckless and criminally negligent in a 2007 case, Williams v. State. A person acts recklessly or is reckless with respect to the result of his conduct when he is aware of but consciously disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk that the result will occur. The risk must be of such a nature and degree that its disregard constitutes a gross deviation from the standard of care that an ordinary person would exercise under all the circumstances as viewed from the actor's standpoint. However, criminal recklessness must not be confused with or blended into criminal negligence, a lesser culpable mental state. With criminal negligence, the defendant ought to have been aware of a substantial and unjustifiable risk that his conduct could result in the type of harm that did occur, and that this risk was of such a nature that the failure to perceive it was a gross deviation from the reasonable standard of care exercised by ordinary people. Criminal negligence depends upon a morally blameworthy failure to appreciate a substantial and unjustifiable risk, while recklessness depends upon a more serious moral blameworthiness, the actual disregard of a known substantial and unjustifiable risk. Regardless of the alcoholic beverage, Sergeant Hartman ought to have known that speeding through an intersection and disregarding a stop sign created a substantial and unjustifiable risk of running into someone else and causing death or injury. He even stated that he was not paying attention. A 40-year-old police sergeant ought to know that not paying attention and playing on your phone while you are driving a 2-ton truck could cost someone their life. Hartman was immediately placed on administrative leave, and the district attorney brought the evidence before a grand jury trying to make a case for distracted driving, which is just for the sergeant being on a cell phone while driving. I don't understand why the DA would reduce the charges that drastically in front of a grand jury. Now, state prosecutors, such as in this case, typically use grand juries in cases that they do not believe they have enough evidence to win a trial. The evidence submitted before the jury is secret. The defense is not allowed to provide any evidence, call any witnesses, or cross-examine state witnesses. It is 100% the prosecutor's show to enable them to see if they can win the case. The grand jury is then given the option to indict or not to indict. In this case, the grand jury opted to not indict the sergeant for any crimes, which baffles me. I have no idea what evidence was shown to the grand jury, but this is ridiculous. Just from the video, we have clear evidence that he meets the standard for a much worse crime than what the prosecutor brought to trial. But wait, there's more. Sergeant Hartman is still employed at the San Marcos Police Department. He was not fired. He was not demoted. He was not disciplined at all for having an open beer can in his car, speeding, flying through stop signs, severely injuring one person, and taking the life of another. All he received was a ticket for failure to stop at a stop sign. Pamela Watts, the other individual in the car that was struck, and life partner of Jennifer Miller, spoke recently at a rally condemning the San Marcos Police Department and the district attorney.
I asked you, D.A. Gertz, would you be okay with that if this was your loved one? Would you be okay presenting this case as a case of distracted driving if it was your loved one? I don't think you would. They talk about his alcohol, that, oh, he wasn't drinking. He claims that he wasn't drinking that day. This wasn't just a 12-ounce beer. This was a 24-ounce beer and lots of beer salts. So it tells you he drinks that probably fairly often. But they are overlooking that as if it isn't even an element, because 3 hours later, they got his blood. He did not volunteer it. He refused any sobriety test. They had to get a blood search warrant to get his blood. And yeah, it came back clean 3 hours later. But I asked you, is there any reason he didn't give it on the scene? If it had been me and I weren't drinking, I'd have had my arm out first thing saying, draw my blood, prove that I wasn't drinking. Is that what he did? No. They hauled him off in handcuffs and took him to Lockhart PD and had to wait to get a blood search warrant. At 7:20 that afternoon, they finally got his blood. And when my attorney asked him under oath why he didn't prove his sobriety and why he wouldn't let him have his blood, he said, I just wanted to go home. Really. Jennifer wanted to go home too. Jennifer's never, ever coming home. And that's on him. This should be an issue of right and wrong, and there needs to be accountability. I do not understand when I offered to settle this, all I wanted was for him to give up his badge for life being a police officer, because he does not deserve to wear the uniform or the badge. There's plenty of young men and women who do. I appreciate their service. I have nothing against law enforcement, but this lockstep with district attorneys has got to stop. There needs to be oversight of our district attorneys. He gets to do whatever he pleases with no oversight. The Attorney General's office told me it's completely within his authority to present or not present whatever evidence he wants. Is that justice? That's not justice. We're supposed to be, this should have gone to a jury trial. We should have been judged by our peers. But the DA knows how that would have gone, so he didn't allow it to go that way. And now this officer is protected by double jeopardy. And then the Seguin police chief shows up today and says, my hands are tied. I only had 180 days, and I was only there 3 days when I had to make the decision to put him back to work. Well, you know, he filled the shoes of his predecessor. And if his predecessor should have acted, his predecessor should have acted. But the city of Lockhart, the county of Hayes, need to act. You've got pending DWI cases. Try litigating one of those, because I guarantee you I will release and be a witness for any defense attorney that asks me. And they shouldn't let it go that far, because I don't want to do that. If we've got people out there drinking and driving, they should not be doing that. That is an epidemic. But if you're not going to prosecute police officers, how dare you try to prosecute citizens? What's good for one is good for all, and there doesn't need to be two levels of justice in our society today. I'm fed up. I'm fed up.
If it had been your wife or your child, would you be happy with that? No, sir, you would not. And I will not shut up. I will not be appeased, and I will not stop until that man is no longer wearing a uniform for anybody. The judgments that he made that day weren't just one, weren't just two. There were so many negligent acts committed that day, and people forget. I mean, it's like I hear people saying, well, he didn't have any alcohol in his system. Well, they didn't draw his damn blood for 3 hours, and he's a big guy. He could have metabolized 3 beers and come up totally clean.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, you can't act like there was no alcohol involved in this issue. I dare y'all to prosecute one DWI case in this city or this county between now and the time he's terminated, because I will make a laughing stock out of the PD, out of him, and out of this county. I dare you. Go ahead. Put them on the stand. I will be their chief witness, and I intend to be.
I can't say it much better than Pamela Watts. From the outside looking in, it appears that the sergeant received preferential treatment. The fact that the department took no disciplinary action is obscene. This man killed someone because, according to his own words, he was not paying attention. Well, America is paying attention. The voters are paying attention. The taxpayers are paying attention. The people are paying attention. It is time that we get this right. You are not entitled to a better justice system because of who you are, because of who your parents are, or because of what your job might be. What do you think? How should this have been handled differently? Let us know in the comments below. And remember that no matter who you are, you have value and you have rights. Do not be afraid to use them, and we'll see you next time right here on Legal Dissent.